I think Gabriele did the content, and then I think one of the children is so we need to have a photo of Uta, so she's in a few, and I had Gray, my brother, enlarge that, so he enlarged it, and I just did the formatting last night.
I never knew her when she looked like that.
I know.
By the time I met her, she looked like she did in the later years.
Yeah, I knew her young one. I know, I love that image of her. That was a...
Welcome to the Circle Center. I know we have several people who have never been here before. My name's Dennis Walterding. I'm the president of Avatar Mayor Bobbi's Circle of Friends, and the Circle Center is our little creation. And it was established for many reasons. We have all kinds of activities here, from almost the individual to the group, from educational to spiritual to entertainment. But of all of the things that this place is here for and that we do, nothing strikes me more deeply in the heart than when we can honor members of our community who have gone on. Today we honor Uta Almuth Bowman, a woman I did not have the pleasure of knowing, but many of you did. And so I will pass the microphone now to Gabriele Parker, her daughter. Gabriele?
It's so wonderful to see all these familiar faces that I haven't seen in so long. Thank you all for coming. It's such a blessing to have you here to share in this day of memory and celebration. People who know me at Thanksgiving and have friends who have dinner every Thanksgiving, and we go around the table and give thanks for things that I can never get through it without crying. So if I can't get through that without crying, today will be no exception. So thank you again for coming. I hope all of you have a program to see kind of what's going to be happening. There will be a time for general sharing from friends. Just a reminder to, keep it contained, because I'm sure there are a number of you who would like to say something about Uta and your memories and experiences with her. So what I will begin with is some words of Mayor Bobbi's about death and dying from a book that she gave to Francis, my son's fiance, the day they left Washington after Christmas this year, or last year. Just kind of randomly gave to Lily, and so I felt it was appropriate that I read some things from that book. It's the book Mystery of Life and Death. All the so-called births and deaths are only sleeps. The difference between sleep and death is that after you sleep, you awake and find yourself in the same body. But after death, you awake in a different body. You never die. Only the blessed ones die and become one with God. There is only one real birth and only one real death. Man is born once with the birth of the mind, and man dies once with the annihilation of the mind. Birth of mind involves the process of evolution, reincarnation, and involution. Death of mind is realization of the self. Life does not end with death. Survival after death is as true as death after life. To end the ceaseless succession of lives and deaths, death itself has to be annihilated in life. On annihilating death in life by completely freeing consciousness of all illusion, man becomes God. Death is like throwing away clothes which have become useless through wear and tear. Just as a traveler man stops at different places and at each halt may change clothes according to his needs, so the individual goes on changing his bodies according to the needs of his sanskaras. If you have love for the dead, it should be selfless. The dead do not want your expressions of sadness. Manifest such love from them that they would be pleased and at peace. If you want the consciousness of their souls to progress, express selfless love. Do not make them unhappy by your weeping and wailings. The joy expressed by people at the birth of a child should be expressed when a person breathes his last, instead of all the show of sorrow, grief, and sympathy. I know Uta didn't like to be sorrowful, so I want to acknowledge her joy in life and all the people here that she enjoyed so much, all the things that she loved to do in her life, her grandchildren, and so many things that you will hear about. Dana Ferry has a lovely piece to share with us that will give you a wonderful perspective of Uta's life from beginning to end, really. So I'm going to give you to Dana now.
Jay Baba.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd long hoped that Uta would write her memoirs because her life was so remarkable, but she was not inclined to write or talk about herself. Sorry, I've got a slight frog today. We all know that her friends were very important to her. She had a way of making us feel that, and of course she was deeply important to us. Jane Haynes once said that Uta was a rock. I took that to mean she was totally reliable, that one could count upon her, and I agreed. But most of all, what one could count on was her determination to serve and her focus upon Meher Baba. For me, oh dear, Uta also was home. Her door was open. She provided me with an actual home soon after I came to live in Myrtle Beach in the early 70s, and she gave me work in the Montessori school she founded as well. She provided me with a home in Washington 11 years later. With Jane Haynes and Mary McBride, she was among the earliest of those who volunteered to help connect medical services for residents of the downtown community. And we shared in those beautiful friendships forged through the CVS clinic in the 70s as well. Talking about home, you have to include mention of her cooking, which was pretty divine all of the time. Holiday parties were a must at her house, always, and there was an abundance of food and guests, and if at Christmas, always a Stollen, a German cake. She loved the traditions of Christmas Eve and Christmas especially, but Thanksgiving was a big deal as well. She knew how to use those spices. And tea. We can't forget the perpetual tea which she offered round the clock on any day. Many of you know that Uta founded the first Montessori school in Myrtle Beach. She had trained in the Montessori method and was certified as a teacher, but my understanding is that she had never actually had a classroom of her own before opening this school. She had the determination and guts, and with Elizabeth Patterson's encouragement and Baba's inner guidance, she got herself from Texas to South Carolina to open that school. Because of her, many children of Mayor Baba's lovers and Myrtle Beach residents had the experience of an early Montessori education. Uta had a natural affinity for children, motherly and protective. She had a childlike innocence and curiosity herself. Generous almost to a fault. There was a time when Uta worked without a salary at the same time she included many scholarship students backed entirely by her. During one period, she provided the transportation as well. She made sure her staff members were always paid, and when the school made enough money, she paid herself too, which was not all the time. The school continued for many years successfully, however, and was sold eventually to Cathy McKibben. Uta's deep love and sensitivity towards the natural world informed her teaching style. She was always exploring nature and observing animal and plant life with the excitement and intensity of the children whom she taught. She shared deeply in their enthusiasm and sparked it by her own. She was often seen bringing new insects and reptiles into the classroom, inspiring curiosity and caregiving in her young students. And she always had animals herself. Who, having met him, can ever forget her dog Rebel, who who had something amiss after having been hit in the head by a car, I think, before she adopted him. One had to be careful navigating around Rebel. Later, she had several lovely, more Pacific dogs and cats, and she welcomed my cat into her house when I lived with her in those early days. Knowing the Uta of later years, some of you might be surprised to know that she also went camping with Gabriele and me at least once, and she was the real camper among us, as I remember. Uta used to say something like this about herself. She had a German body, a Chinese mind, and an American accent. Uta was born in Beijing and lived there until she was 14. Uta's father was a successful German businessman, and her parents, 2 older sisters and Uta, lived in a large house and had several servants, as was the style for foreign business people. Sometime, a little after Uta's 10th birthday, one of Chiang Kai-shek's generals took a fancy to their nice house and turned them out of it at gunpoint. It was terrifying for little Uta and her family, and the final straw was the fact that he took her bicycle, which was a recent birthday present. And the part of the story that always stood out for me was little Uta would have none of this. She threw a fit, and the general, vanquished by the cries and tears of 10-year-old Uta, relented and gave the bike back. She was not to be messed with. Uta's family lived in the servants' quarters of that house with whatever possessions they had managed to keep until her father died when she was 14. And soon after that, Mao took over the country and nationalized the businesses, and the family had moved back to Germany by then. Uta attended a boarding school in Switzerland until college, and she, after marriage, moved to the USA and to Texas with a very young Gabriele and received her Montessori training. But during that time, in the late 60s, her good fortune also took her to the World's Fair in Montreal, to a booth dedicated to Avatar Meher Baba. She picked up a universal message, and a deep recognition and connection were awakened immediately, dramatically altering the course of her life. As far as I recollect, Uta had met no other Baba lovers at that time. Her relationship was strictly, directly with him. Eventually, she called the Meher Center and spoke with Elizabeth, who encouraged her to come to Myrtle Beach. Never having met Uta before that time, I can't say if that rock-like quality was already there. But it certainly was by the time I met her in 1971, when she was already running her Montessori school, which she continued to do for many years. And that was not her only career. Patty reminded me that after selling the school, when Uta attended nursing school at Coastal Carolina, her grades surpassed all previous students' grades in the school. Apparently there was some kind of a plaque attesting to this somewhere on the campus. She then took this training and moved to Mehrabad for 5 years, serving the Avatar Meher Baba Trust as a nurse, which included working with Dr. Goher in the clinic at Merazad. When I went to India one year, Uta was taking care of Erich's, Mirwan's, and Manu's mother, Gaimai, whom she adored, and there's a picture of her in this slideshow. When after 5 years in India, she returned to the USA and to the DC area, she moved towards specializing in hospice care. Later, she used this deep connection with comfort and end-of-life care to aid several Baba lovers at the end of their lives, and I was privileged to work with her during one of those times. She had an inner quietude and compassion that was calming and made her deeply sensitive to her patients, as well as to her friends. It was natural to her to sit silently beside an ailing person who needed and responded to that quiet. It is this compassionate companionship that I will miss the most. Her company had a nourishing and enriching effect upon you. She had a way of looking at you so lovingly that words could become superfluous. But she could laugh, too, and at herself. Although quiet and perhaps an introvert by nature, she could be outspoken, and she knew this and would occasionally comment upon it. She loved a good joke and saw the humor in many situations. She would always laugh with you, never at you. If there was laughter anywhere in the room, Uta was always a part of it. One has to say something about her love of her family because it was central in her life. Upon meeting Gabriele and Uta in those early days at the Mayer Center, one was struck at the specialness in their relationship, which to me seemed almost sisterly, even when Gabriele was 9, a strikingly poised 9-year-old, I might say. In any case, it was obviously at the center of Uta's heart with Meher Baba. And later, when Gabriele became a mother herself, her sons Jay and Francis took up residence in that large, expanding heart. All the developments in their young lives were the subject of exciting news to their Mamu. She was very happy in her family and celebrated their each success with such joy one couldn't help but share in it. So now we celebrate your life, dear Uta, which was a remarkable story of courage, generosity, and love, now guided home by your master, Avatar Meher Baba.
Fortunate this past year when Nan started bringing Uta to the library on Thursday during her shift. And so we would sit there and just look out on the lake and talk about all manner of things, especially her life going back to China. But it was really, we had a lot of laughs and everything. And just looking out there at the lake and the ocean beyond, it's like looking at a fireplace. You know, it's endlessly interesting.
It's a long time we've been together now, and it's a hard climb we've yet to go together. But you know it won't have taken any time at all. When we take life, when we take life, when we take life and give it all our love. When loving is our day and our night. When loving is our day and our night. Many years ago, we stood on the edge of time while we watched the past slowly die between us. But don't cry, for love can take you anywhere at all. Oh, the ocean is our very father now, and the ocean is our very soul. Our way and our goal cannot be taken any way at all. When we take life, when we take life, when we take life and give it all our love. When loving is our day and our night. When loving is our day and our night. When loving is our day and our night.
Who wrote that?
Scott McKay. Way back, this is from the 70s when Uta was here. Even this one too.
Boy.
How was I to know what kind of love I'd find? Fate could be cruel, love could be blind. I took the strangest turns, but destiny was kind. I wouldn't change a thing after all this time. I have gone along a little at a time. Days turn to years, years turn to life, and I have tried to trade the reasons for the rhyme. I've learned to love after all this time. How was I to know what kind of love I'd find? till I touch your soul, and you touch mine. Now when I see my heart reflected in your eyes, I wouldn't change a thing after all this time. No right or wrong, no cut and dry, no weak or strong, no do or die, no night or day, no yours or mine, only you and I, after all this time, only you and I, after all this time, only you and I, after all this time.
So bear with us as we probably struggle through this a little bit, but I, of course, want to thank everybody for being here. Obviously, this is a challenging moment for us. But it means a lot to everybody here and to know how she affected everybody's life. And I think, obviously, everybody being here today is evidence to who she was as a person. So that means a lot to us. Much of, I think, both our memories with Judith are centered around her childhood and holidays. We talked a lot about that, and I think that's already been brought up and Dana mentioned. She brought a lot of great traditions to us. Christmas in particular. She loved to sing carols and have Christmas dinner. She was always particular about eating lamb. Even this year when she was there, she kind of made that choice for us, even if we wanted to do it. She loved to bake. Talked about the Stollen and panettone, and always used to remember eating that and loving that and bringing traditions from her family to ours. You know, I certainly appreciate that, and we'll always remember that. I think no kid doesn't enjoy eating sweet things on holidays for sure. And then the Christmas cookies too. I think there's just so many. Our family food is very close to a lot of our kind of traditions, so I think that's one reason why that is for us. She always, played that grandparent role very well, and always wanted to treat Francis and I and kind of make things special for us. And I think Easter was the same way, and doing Easter egg hunts, and spending countless hours hunting for plastic eggs with Indian chocolate in them. And she really enjoyed. Obviously the candy was standing. Just enjoyed watching us do that and doing that all for us and taking such pleasure in making those moments special. But the memories that really stick with me with her are when we would come home from school, or she would pick us up and take us home, of course have tea, she'd have more snacks. I remember the little Entenmann's cookies, and those were ones I always used to eat lots of. But there were games that we would play kind of as like a a thing that we would do to spend time, but it was really kind of like a continuous, ongoing education for us. And I didn't think of it at the time. You wouldn't think as a kid you'd want to do more school after school. But a lot of the time that's what ended up happening. And there was one particular game, I think it was a card game with animals on it or something, where you do basic math. I don't know, I think it's just because I remember some particular picture of a card in my head for whatever reason. And I always used to just play those math games over and over, and I feel like it really cemented for me this learning that I didn't know was happening. And it was back, I think, probably when I was in elementary school, and I still think that that is probably one of the main reasons that I was successful in math when I was in school. I felt like it was a foundation for all of that I didn't really acknowledge until I got older. So I think it's one of those things as I, grew up and became an adult that I acknowledged kind of the impact that those moments had on my growth, and the whole Montessori school. And I think she was teaching us even if we didn't know it at the time. So it took me a little while to understand that, but I do very much appreciate that now, and kind of recognizing the ways that she's impacted my life, even at the time I didn't know it. So today, I'm happy to celebrate her life, albeit obviously challenging, that, she brought a lot of joy to everybody, and that she would want us to feel that way today. And that obviously her life lives on with us. And, her passing is just a moment in her ongoing life, as my mom was kind of reading earlier, and there's still a lot of celebration and joy left, and it's just one marking in a longer journey for her. I think she'll always be with us and with you as we remember her today.
So we didn't coordinate very much at all, and as it turns out, I've written in very different words, ultimately kind of the same thing. So I'm going to read. Uta has meant so many things and so much to me over the years. She was my grandma, known to Jay and I as Mamo. Like many grandmas, it seemed she would have been happy to spend every waking moment with us. The sheer excitement that bubbled up whenever we saw her, when her eyes spotted us or heard our voice, was utterly palpable. "Oh, Francis," she would say, and her eyes would kind of glide across the horizon as though she were looking at something that wasn't there. It felt as though Jay or I had manifest the brightness of a star in her in that moment. And to have had that warmth and joy standing behind me, pushing me along like the flame, filling a hot air balloon as a gift so profound it's hard for me to believe. The day that she left us, we went home to her house and we found an album of photos from the Montessori school here in Myrtle Beach. And flipping through the photos revealed a world that she had created there that was so familiar to me, something I recognized so potently from my own life. There was intimacy in the school, and there was informality. It was adorned with characteristically German trimmings, wooden blocks. It was very orderly, but it was also very calm and friendly. And there was photos of a ever so Uta Christmas party with the weird gangly Christmas tree and all the students in line for their presents. there was kind of an orderliness and a cleanliness to the space, or a setting of the stage which had such intention in it. And she always, I feel, held the beautiful tension between the personal or casual and seriousness. Just how one should be casual about their loving, in her eyes, the most serious pursuit. The toys should be playful, should be fun. But when the day is done, fun has its place and life has an intrinsic seriousness to it. And no matter how small its moments may seem, the way in which one carries themselves has purpose and effect. I remember as a child going to what was then called Fresh Fields with her after school. We would wander through the store and end up in the bread aisle. In unanimous judgment, we would invariably select a rosemary cheddar cheese bread. We would then drive back to her house and prepare a zinger tea to go with our toast. These events with her seemed simple. They seemed just like what they were, picking up a snack and eating it. But there was such intention in her way, in her steady feel for the world, that they were deeply serious events as well. And what jumped out of those Montessori school photos, as you'll be seeing scrolling across the screen, and other photos as well, kicking with its urgency, was her gleeful smile, the childlike joy and wonder in her when addressing students with her gaze. This, I believe, is truly a rare state, to meet a child's smile with one just as powerful and clear, one that pays no mind to the attendant pain of bills and body. It's a deathly serious moment danced in a casual way. It is a moment of acknowledging the tremendous complexity and dynamism of every moment. It's an attitude of learning, a state that understands itself only as unknowing. She knew the most important thing, the only knowledge that can be intrinsic, that which is little defined in thought and spoken of as love. And what is clear to me now more than ever is how small love can appear and how few carry on observing it in their day-to-day. But it wasn't only children, whether her own or those of the community, that stirred this deeply serious joy in her. It was all of those things in the world that wear heart on sleeve or fur. The only deeply feeling being she seemed to have a hard time seeing in its fullness of emotion was at times herself. For this part of her experience here with us, I have sadness, but also for it I have joy in knowing she is freed in her passing. I see that she is free to fly in and out of the centers of blinding energy that each of us is, free from the constraints of a body with a bum knee. That ever so serious joy in her gaze moved through me, and so too any that have need of the only knowledge that I know to be. And I know there is nothing more true than the presence of her love within me. I have made my life looking into the subtleties of a moment, studying in awe the moments of a leaf on a tree, and to take that looking into myself ever so deeply that I'm blinded so again to see a tree as a moment of energy. It is only clear to me now just how gracefully she danced the song of life, carrying within her this awareness. Same thing, see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Searching for a sound to tell me
didn't know, didn't know. I wondered all the time, asking for the reasons, asking for a sign to show me how to live. I couldn't give, couldn't give. But your love glance set me free to hear your silence speak to me, and I knew that all the while I was searching for your smile. Lord of love, the journey lies right here. Free heart for love, free the mind from fear. You've shown me what to do. Love you, just love you, Lord of love. Just love you, Lord of love.
My friendship with Uta got cemented in India through sharing our vices. She was living there, and I would come for some long visits. And every evening after tea, I would go over and smoke a cigarette with Uta. We would sit out on the porch right outside her room and share an evening smoke, because we were each trying to stop smoking. And that's really, it's just a memory I treasure. I used to call her Utabai, as many did in India. And this morning, I was sitting in the early morning, and I just wrote this to try and capture some of the feeling of gratitude I had to Uta. Dear Uta, I am sitting in the green swing on the guest house porch, listening to the morning quiet. The lilt of early birds, the roar of the surf out past the lake, rain dropping on mossy shingle, green azalea, pine-needled earth. A soft screech repeats high in the pines. Remembering how you and I would sit and listen. On the library porch, in the boathouse, on the bench overlooking the lake, at the mountain views in El Rito, by your room in Mehrabad. We'd listen together to the music of our lives, the troubles, the joys, the hopes, dreams, and pains, the laughter, the bright catches of his song that lifted our hearts. I could count on you, dear friend, to go for the gold, to hold to the truth, to the tenderness, to the beauty, to the sweetness, to put your finger on its pulse and take the measure of love, to be honest. It wasn't always comfortable, and it wasn't always easy, but sure damn worth it. That smile, that understanding, that radiant tenderness. We'd sit and listen, wouldn't we, dear friend? Share a smoke, a laugh, watch a great blue lift from the reeds, delight at 40 hummingbirds crowding the feeder. We'd ease ourselves into the fresh moment of being human together, just ourselves with him. I feel you near, dear friend. You've made your way onto the porch, settled into the white wicker divan, cast a sweet smile in my direction. You gaze out at the lake. We listen together. See, there goes the gator, slipping silently across the still, silvered surface. He sinks out of sight. Is he listening below? What do you hear, Utabai? We are listening with you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
I have these. I often spent Christmases with Uta when she was not with her family. And they were very, very special times. And I found myself on the plane here going, I should write something down, and there were so many memories, such deep memories, that it's hard to find words for them. But at the same time, Judith was out on the porch. I was by the heater, also writing a letter to Uda, because I felt I just needed to talk to her. Dear Uda, I will get to the point because you are a get-to-the-point person. I loved you for that, even when the point was not something I wanted to hear. Dear friend, solid rock of deep Baba love, if we were in your kitchen, which we often were, I would break into a discreet song saying that, and you would laugh, that solid laugh of yours. We would sit down with our toast and our fried eggs. Sometimes it was scrambled eggs. And perhaps that outburst would make you think of a memory from Hamipur, or the early days at Marizan, Zod, riding your bike between Bod and Zod. What I appreciated most, you didn't laugh. Well, you didn't, I can't read my writing. You didn't sugarcoat anything. You shared your real journey, honest, full of certain kind magistry, smart, wise, seeking for an all-encompassing Baba. But what I appreciated most was that you did not treat me like a student. You treated me like an equal. Our Christmases were like 2-week-long Baba meetings, pinging off of each other, musing about Baba and the Rachel Maddow show. Baba and how much he would love us as we were getting our mochas with whipped cream, even though you shouldn't have it. And yes, Baba, and yes, Uda, I know how to do the drive-in. She was always correcting me, and I didn't mind it. We would trade stories, concerns, struggles, sitting on your couch with the Christmas candles lit, and chatting about the finer colors of that Lynn Ott painting and what they meant to you and I. I will never forget those moments. I must thank you for those. Thank you for telling me about your walk to Nangara, where Baba announced his avatarhood publicly. No, I guess it wasn't a walk. It was your hike to that sacred place. So many details I have forgotten, but I have not forgotten the look of her sitting on her couch, the wide, expansive charge in the room, and the look on her face, radiant, far away, reverent, wise, and what it gave to me. Dear friend, you have been a gift to me from the day on my first trip to the center when you told me that if I really wanted to understand Baba, I needed to go to India and spend time with a Mandali. Standing at that boathouse, this strong woman was telling me something I really needed to heed. And within months, I was in India, embraced by Nanakare. And he said, welcome home. Dear friend, we once stood on your porch on a clear morning. I turned to you and said, it's so wonderful to have your mind quiet. It opens so much. And you said, with that Buddha smile, I once stood on a porch with Elizabeth in Delruba. And she said, don't you just love those wide open spaces with Baba? And both of us stood there silently and shared the wide open space together, silently looking at the beautiful morning, those subtle colors caught in a droplet together, admiring the set that was Baba's divine play together. It is fitting I am writing this in my work notebook. You always reminded me how important my work was when I forgot, when I just couldn't hike up that mountain to that sacred place of service. One more time, I would call you and chatter on, and you would bring me back to the real, sometimes with a blunt thud, but most often with a gentle nudge. Dear one, I will miss you, but I know that you are in the wide open space now. No longer on the porch with me, but you have gone before me and have left behind all I will need to follow in your footsteps. I am glad you are free, dear friend. I am glad you are one step closer to your goal. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm not going to share a lot of the past and my memories of Uta, but what I felt on hearing that she had passed and comfort that I got from remembering these words from Baba. It was from Kitty's book, Love Alone Prevails. And Kitty wrote that one afternoon, as we were all sitting in the small kitchen on Maribot Hill, a cable sent by Margaret Crass arrived with the news that Mabel Ryan, who had been seriously ill in London, had passed on. I might have to someone to finish it for me. There's something about standing up here. The cable was read out to us. Baba, looking up, holding the cable in his hand, said, "She has come to me. She is still here. Where else can she go? Only you do not see her. For being without her coat and hat on, you do not recognize her." Excuse me. According to Baba, it is the habit of seeing each other that makes us miss each other. When we are parted, but actually there is no change.
and a separation called death. In a letter to Delia, Bob stated, "I know how you feel, parting from dear Mabel. But Mabel has not parted from you. She is closer to you now than she was or could be before. Love knows no separation. And because you loved her so much, nothing, not even death, as physical separation is called, can break that tie of love there is between you." Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
My name is Cyndi Hull, and Judy was my friend. I was her gardener, and we met. I met her in the later part of her life as her physical health was beginning to fail because she couldn't tend to her garden, and the universe brought us together. And she actually launched my side business by word of mouth to many of you in this community. I would come, she had her lawn people, but no one was allowed to touch her flowers or her garden. I was her gardener. And yet we had such a connection, and it was such an honor to know her. I loved her very, very much. She was very special to me. I would go and I'd work in the yard, and then we'd have tea. And then we would talk, and we shared the life of the spirit. We just shared what we shared. And then we would get done, and we also shared, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. I have lived a life of the phoenix. I have crashed and burned and risen over and over and over again. And we shared that all the time. And it was a wonderful, wonderful life with her. And so, she just brought a lot of joy. And I would go there into her yard, and she would say to me, "I don't know what it is about you, but when you come to my yard, when you leave, my yard is so happy." And so that's what we shared. We shared joy and happy. And then we, like I say, we would share spirit. It was always deep. It was very deep with her, and I really could appreciate that. As a matter of fact, I'm not a member of the Baba community, but I know I'm connected to the Baba community. I consider myself a friend of Baba. And she would, the very early conversations, she would end the conversation with Jai Baba, and then she'd go, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to say that to you." I said, "Oh, no, please do. It just feels so right between you and I." And so that every conversation was always ended with Jai Baba, and it was just landed so well. And, the last, I had the thoughts that, I shared with her were just, like I say, deep spirit. We had a lot of laughs. But I would have that, and I remember the last time I saw her was in the fall cleanup. It was the routine, the fall cleanup. And we left, and we'd see you in the spring, she would say, and we would just get done with all of our spirit talk and look at each other. We always ended the conversation with, "Well, now that we've solved all the world's problems, ha 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 ha." And off I would go, and it was always a lifting, always a lifting, a shared lifting. So I never met her family, but we never had a conversation where we weren't talking about the love of our family. And she was pointing the pictures of her grandchildren and her daughter. She loved you so much. She was the mother, the grandmother, the eternal mother, So I definitely want to say I'm so sorry for your loss, but I am so grateful to have shared in the joy of a very, very special woman. So I'll pass this on to the next friend.
She said that there's no doubt that Uta is here and with us all today, and thrilled, and I'm thrilled for her. She's not suffering. She was a wonderful friend. She was a rock in my life, and I think it was a mutual I learned a lot from her. I wasn't going to say all this, but I did. I learned so much. She was just a fabulous cook and so easygoing about everything. And even she's still, sorry, I'm a little mished up. I'm having my own situation today. She was always trying to grow. And even though she sometimes had a biting tongue, she tried to work on it and didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but knew her failings or whatever. I only knew her recently in the last 6 years when we played cards, so I didn't know all of the wonderful things she did, all the vibrant, but I got the wisdom of the ages because now she had a lot of wisdom, which is why I didn't want to be friends with her in the beginning because I thought she was a little too snooty. But and I realized she really knew a lot and she was wonderful. And I'm glad she was in my life. I love you, Uta. Carolyn was saying that we all salute you and onto your wonderful new journey. And I'm lucky to have had her as a friend.
Uta in the early 70s, she was one of the early people, not the earliest, but one of the early people to start what we used to call the off-center people. And I moved here shortly after that, and my best friends in the community were Craig and Louise Smith, and still are. And Uta lived exactly counted, catty-cornered to where the Smith residence was in Windy Hill on the ocean side. And so I used to see her a lot because I was many hours visiting over the Smith residence. And so, you know, just invariably, I would run into her and say, J. Bob, embrace or something like that. And then she hired me at a Montessori school for about a year, and I worked with young children, mostly around nature issues. Because that's been my, that's what I majored in college was biology. So I worked with, little creatures at the school and the young children. And I also worked alongside Anna Craddock, so she used to be Anna Hoffman. And Uta created, as people have said already, a wonderful, magical environment that was both childlike and also conducive to leading the children into further growth and maturation. So it was wonderful. She was a wonderful exemplar of practical and also magical and spiritual education. I'd say that the one word that comes to me about Uta more than anything else is sobriety. Not that she had a drinking problem and she becomes sober, but that she had a sobriety about life, a deep-seated sobriety that most of us don't have. And although she was subject to whatever, might upset her at different times, yet she had a real ballast of sobriety that carried her through whatever exigencies and issues she had to confront. And I think, listening to all of you, who knew better than I did, some of you, because I was never a close friend of hers, that seems to be what's speaking to, is that she had that sobriety and that ballast. So I think that she certainly was a great devotee and lover of Mayor Bobbi, and inspired many others to the love of Bobbi. And I'm sure she will be greatly missed, but at the same time, we're happy to see her go off to her next part of her journey.
I arrived in Myrtle Beach, I think, just around the same time Uta arrived in Myrtle Beach. And we used to gravitate to her house on 62nd Avenue, which was a popular place for all of us young people with raging hormones. No, we were all single, and it was just an interesting time with a bunch of young people. But she was always very loving. I don't remember anything about biting tongues or anything like that. I just remember her always being nice. And then she moved to Windy Hill, and I also ended up in Windy Hill. And that's my memories, just going to her house and Bobbi's house frequently, and it was just real nice. That's it. All kinds of food. That was another thing. There was a lot of young, unattached guys also would show up around dinner time. That was, yes. But it was fun. It was all good.
Didn't you join us for Thanksgiving dinner a few times?
A few times, yes.
Yeah.
That and other things. I saw the picture that you were at my house down the street with Auntie Kay Ronnie that time. And that was, what year was it? 75 or 6. I don't know what year it was. It was all fun because we all lived within walking distance of each other. It was all this little enclave in Windy Hill. So anyway, so we miss her, but I'm sure she's in a better place. I'm convinced, actually.
So I'm not sure I'm quite as eloquent as my sons are, but I will share a few memories about my mother, Bowman. You don't realize what a mother sacrifices until you become one. I can see that she put my needs before her own for many, many years. Then she did that same thing with so many others. You could see this in her work as a teacher and then as a nurse, giving of herself for so many years. When as a single parent I felt overwhelmed or like I couldn't hold it together, I thought of Uta and of her example of ongoing strength to help carry me forward. I have marveled at how she moved through life doing so many things all by herself. What incredible fortitude she had. I, of course, soaked up her love of animals, and for all but a few years of my life, I had a dog or cat in my home. Life just doesn't quite feel complete without a furry friend. I can remember Uta stopping suddenly on the side of the road because she'd see a stray dog. She'd get out and try to catch that dog so she could either rescue it or take it back to its owner. As a child, I was sometimes a little bit impatient with this little activity. But now I find myself doing exactly the same kinds of things. Like mother, like daughter. Her example taught me compassion for all living beings. Her days of volunteering for community volunteer services was another learning through observation. Accompanying her on those days in Race Path taught me not only compassion, but also selflessness and gratitude. Something else I inherited from her is a real love of holidays and the enjoyment of creating a loving and beautiful space and sharing it with friends and family, as both my sons have attested to and Mary has as well. So it is fitting that our last joyous time together was a wonderful thing. For several heart-filled days, we shared food and time together in Maryland at my house. It will be an enduring memory of the joy that she created in my life and in Jay and Francis's lives and those friends around her. In her last years, as her body refused to cooperate with her will, I know she was frustrated with and missed not being able to serve others. Though I also know that she was still a support to many of her friends. Her caring and compassion for all will be missed. So, as I was trying to think of what to prepare for this occasion, I had some books from her house, and there was I particularly love Hafiz, and one of the books she had with lots of marks in it was Hafiz. And so I picked one of those pages she had marked to read today that felt particularly appropriate. Love is the funeral pyre where I have laid my living body. All the false notions of myself that once caused fear, pain, have turned to ash as I neared God. What has arisen from the tangled web of thought and sinew, now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels, and screams from the guts of infinite existence itself. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.